So welcome to the 14th edition to Wild Outside Podcast. Big thanks to OddStory. That's where we are. Come drink their beers. They just got a couple new ones I've learned today on tap. So super cool organization. They give us the free reign and feed us beer for these. So if you got any really cool odd stories about the outdoors and you would like to be on our podcast, email us, info@wildtrails.org. Before we get back to our first ever second-time guest, Mindy Haworth, little news about Wild Trails. We have our first ever Odd Story Pint Night here this Thursday, and you don't want to miss it. Number one is that 10% of the proceeds goes back to Wild Trails, so big thanks to OddStory, but also there's some super cool stuff being donated for the silent auction, like raft trips and a really cool table that Mark Akers is building right now, and a chainsaw that Wild Trails is donating. I guess it wouldn't be donating, something that we sell that comes back to Wild Trails. So anyway, we have, I've got a great picture of my shop now, the 7 or 8 chainsaws that are in there. I'm working on kind of tuning them all up. So we have a large collection. It's kind of hoarding, sort of chainsaw order. A bunch of stuff, bunch of Wild Trails stuff. OddStory's donating a pint, what do you call it? Pint club or something, mud club. Anyway, this Thursday from 6 to 9 at OddStory, please come. The next race we got coming up is Still Hollow. It's a half marathon and a 10K out at Enterprise South. I got to believe it's the best summer race in the area. For some reason, it just never feels like hot summer. Maybe because we're done, before 11 o'clock. So it's good.
Yeah.
So that's about it. Oh, wait, one more thing. We just finished the coolest project up on North Chickamauga Creek Trail, part of the Cumberland Trail. We're building the section further up, but down lower, closer to Saudi Daisy than where we're working. It's about 4 miles from the trailhead up. For those of you that know it, called the cable crossing, but this really sketched out skinny cable that's right on the top of this waterfall, and I found out the other day that 2 people have fallen off that waterfall, and oh my God, the jagged, nasty rocks at the bottom of that waterfall. So that was ugly. So if 2 people have fallen off, you can't imagine how many dogs have fallen off that too. And then you go around the corner and you step down some nasty stuff, you could easily fall off, and then you climb down this really sketchy ladder. So that section of the Cumberland Trail has been there for decades. I don't know how long. So we have replaced that with 4 flights of stairs with several landings and then a bridge that goes over the water at the base of the waterfall, and then reconnected it all with trail. So we've got one more, probably half a day left that we're going to do next Saturday. So if anybody wants to come help us finish that, again, info@wildtrails.org, and we'll get you involved. So what's going on with L2?
I would say, first of all, on the trail building, go check out the photos on Facebook if nothing else. It's really, really exciting. But get out there and check out the trail as well.
Yeah.
On L2, we always, during the summer, we try to give back to the community with special days, which last year we didn't get to do because we were trailing into a launch point. But it is July, and we have them back up and running this year. So Tuesdays are half off sup, so you can go out and paddleboard for $10 an hour.
Tuesdays? Oh, sweet.
Wednesdays are half off kayaking, so you can kayak for $15 an hour. And Thursdays are college Thursdays. So if you have a Valley College ID, you can paddleboard, kayak, whatever for $12 an hour. So those days are back up and running. Come see us.
So once I get done with this bridge project, Seth and I are going to get back out on Lookout Creek. Last time I was on it, there was probably only 1.5 miles left to clear, but based on these storms, I'll bet there's more work to be done. So our promise is that we're going to get that entire thing cleaned up by the end of this summer, and we're fairly close.
Yeah.
So anyway, our guest, Mindy Haworth, has been here before, if you recall. It was right before the stage race, and it was talking about stage races. And if you recall, the story back then was a kind of focused around apprehension and fear and I don't know if I can do it and blah, blah, blah. But she killed it. And she also killed her ankle.
Let's see. Here we go. Oh, yeah.
But that was at the very end of the last day. So just give us a little blow by blow, not of the last day, but just the whole thing. How did it go?
Well, it was everything I expected it to be. The reason this was such a big deal of a race for me is I had volunteered the past several years working it. And just the people I met from the runners and the other volunteers, it's just a really special race. I can't even describe why this race is so special. It just draws the right people. It draws the right people to it. I don't know. I think it's because it's so brutal and so hard. It was definitely one of the hardest things I've ever attempted. And even going into day one, I knew I'd finish day one. Knew I wouldn't have any trouble.
You killed it day one. I was blown away how quick you came in. You were in the middle of the pack. You said, I'll be the last one every day. I was like, no, I don't think so.
Well, I knew I could. I trained a lot on Raccoon, and I knew that loop really well. And I knew that would not be a struggle for me, especially day one. I did try. I listened to a lot of advice, good advice, not just rando advice.
Not just my advice.
So well, a lot of your advice.
You listened to good advice as opposed to mine.
Well, no, you gave me a lot of good advice. Chris gave me a lot of good advice. Kelly Tilford, who was on with me last time, she gave me some great advice because she ran it last year. Just different things to think about, and everybody said don't go out too fast day one. But I knew that would be the day I could just kind of go out and run. Mm-hmm. So I did. I did not go full force. I didn't run it as if I was racing it, but I definitely, ran harder than just a training run.
Yeah.
And at the end of day one, Randy said to me, Mindy, take it slow tomorrow.
It's a 60-mile race, not a 20-mile
I know. He's like, take it slow tomorrow. And I was like, okay. So I definitely heeded that advice. And day two, I went out much slower, and I took it easy. It's different. It's funny, the different strategies when you're talking to people out there. One gal was really, really concerned and upset that she wasn't going to make time. And I kept going, all I had on my watch was how long I'd been out there. Yeah. And I knew that I had 5 hours and 15 minutes to finish day two.
Yeah.
So, if my watch is reading, I've been out there for 2.5 hours, and I know I've more than finished half the race, I'm good to go. Yeah. And I kept saying, you're fine. She's like, oh, but my pace per minute. I was like, we've got it. Yeah. We're fine. So there is definitely, even from really great runners, there's something about the stage race that it's there's no guarantee you're going to finish anything, even with a busted foot. Yeah. You never know what's going to happen out there if you can finish. But yeah, going into day two, I had much more trepidation than day one, and it was slower going. I did not run it as fast, and it was hard. We were just talking about how I think the lowest point, well, there were a couple low points on that day. There's that horrible climb from hell right before the 10-mile aid station. Whew. And everybody that's run that knows that's, I think I almost fell backward because it's so steep and there was no purchase.
I think the High Adventure Trail has got to be the steepest trail in Chattanooga, but it doesn't really count because there's a rope. It's more of a climb than a trail. But that
utility easement
that Sawmill Branch Trail. So when you cross this power line a couple times, and then you're on that Sawmill Branch, and then it goes up, straight up
to Covenant.
No, not at the very end. The one before that.
Oh.
At the beginning of the loop. That's probably the steepest trail in Chattanooga.
Okay. Well, I don't know. Right
before you get to the aid station.
Yeah, the utility easement. That's the one where I swear I almost fell backward because it was so steep and there was no purchase.
I think the one before that's steeper.
You think it's steeper?
Yeah.
Well, that was hard. And then
they're both hard. It's really hard.
So. A friend from another outdoor activity once told my son, who's a kayaker, he'd been on this epic camping, fishing, kayaking trip with his coach, and he was telling us this horror story about how they had to get up every 30 minutes in the middle of the night to go check their lines. And at one point, at 2 o'clock in the morning, he said, "This is not a camping trip for weenies." And I kept saying all weekend, "This is not a trail race for weenies." It was hard. There was nothing easy about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I would say so. OddStory had a tent set up on day two at the finish line, and unfortunately, for those of us running, they're also at the last aid station, which means we have another 5 miles to go. And right there is the OddStory beer tent, and then the creek and the ice bath, and you have to run over the bridge and look at all the people that have already finished the race, knowing you still have the last 5 miles to go before you get to enjoy it.
And you've probably already heard the stories about how that last 5 miles is not the first 5 miles
Oh,
that
no.
you ran.
Oh no,
It's a different loop.
Oh, it was so hard. It was so hard. And I have run all of that before.
Yeah.
Well, there's no running from the bottom of the waterfall up to the top. There was no running from the top to the bottom either. That was all walking and picking our way through.
Yeah. Anybody can run that.
It was a super, super, super hard 5 miles.
Yeah.
And there's that swimming thing that we have to cross right at the end. And I knew I was close. I think I literally laid down and swam in that hole before I finished because it was hot and brutal.
But as you know, and you've heard everyone else say, that the stage race is all about the last day. And it's kind of interesting looking at the results of the first 2 days. Things don't change much. I mean, the athlete runner is the one that really excels the last day, because that last day is by far the most technical 20 miles I think there is in this part of the country. And so the real trail runner comes out that last day, because there's so many really fast runners that just cannot run fast over big jagged rocks.
Well, okay, I'm not really fast, but yeah, there was no running.
That is just, I mean, there's no way you can train for that other than train on really jagged rocks. I mean, it's just there's no thing out there that can duplicate a technical trail. So you just have to do it. And a lot of parts of this country, there just aren't any technical trails. I mean, I was talking to these guys, from South Carolina, and said we just don't have anything technical where we are. It's like they come here and just everyone hates that last day because it's foreign to them. So anyway,
it is interesting that you say everybody hates the last day, because I knew it was going to be my nemesis. I know I am not a super technical. I love trails and I love being on single track a lot, but I am not. It's not what I excel at. Being on the rough, really all those rocks everywhere.
Well, before you go on, Mindy said, I mean, I remember talking to her at the beginning. I mean, there were tears in her eyes. I don't think I can do this. I just feel like shit. I just can't. I can't do this. I don't feel good. I said, you don't even think about it. Just get started. And everything will change once you get started. So just get it out of your head and get going, because you're going to start at least. So.
Well, I was going to say, and I had heard that Mark Akers, who's making the table, he has run stage races, and he told me the mountain stage race, and he's like, Mindy, that's the hardest. No matter what distance I've done, he's like, that was the hardest race I've ever had to do, because that day 3, showing up on day 3, you're beat. You're just beat down, you're exhausted, you're tired. And I was like, well, not me. I'll be fine. Oh no, I almost like called on my friends that were going to be coming and said, guys, I'm not even starting. I can't do it. I felt awful. I mean, I felt awful. I've never felt that bad, knowing I had 20 really, really hard miles ahead of me. And I was like, I just don't know. And then, yes, Randy's like, just start. And so I just had to convince him. For all the people out there, you just start. And sometimes it's, for anything, it's just showing up. You just got to show up. And I did. I showed up knowing that I might not finish in time on day 3. I knew that I was dragging serious tail. I knew that I hurt bad, didn't feel good, and that it was really technical, and I was going to have trouble making time anyway, even if I felt on top of the world. Yeah. So it was on this conversation with myself. First, it was get out of bed, and then it was like, okay, get your running shit together. Okay, just drive to the race. And I literally drove to the race, and I put my car seat back, and I laid down in my front seat going, oh my gosh, what am I going to do? What am I going to do?
While you're driving?
No, once I got to the race, I parked. I got there really early. And then I was like, okay, just get out of the car, Mindy. So I got out of the car, and I started seeing a few people, and I was like, I don't know what I'm going to do. And I was almost in tears, because this was like something I had wanted so bad to be able to do. And then I was like, what if I don't even, I was just psyching myself out. And one of the girls I had met, which again attributes to the really cool people that this race draws, I had met them at Packet Pickup. It was this whole gang from St. Louis.
St. Louis.
The St. Louis contingent. and she's fast. She
Yes,
was
she
like a
is fast,
super
yeah.
fast girl. We'd met and hung out, and they told me where they were staying, and I had given them some restaurant recommendations on packet pickup night, and I told them about the restaurant that my son works at, and I was like, oh, it's really great Thai food. You should go there.
Which was that?
Alex?
It's called Alex Thai.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I went there for the first time yesterday. It's
Yeah, that's
delicious.
nice.
It is really great. So I told them about that. So that morning, Sunday morning, feeling awful, she came over to me, and I was like, I don't feel so good. She's like, I have something for you. And I was like, what could you
Thai
from?
food.
Yeah. I was like, what could you possibly have for me? And she came and she brought her camera over and she showed me a picture of the whole gang from St. Louis had gone to Alex Thai, and they had pictures with my son. I was like,
nice.
and I started crying. I was like, oh, okay, I think I'll start. I'll go ahead and start. It did make me feel better. So sometimes just the camaraderie of the other runners, the people you've met and made friends with, the race organizers, as well as the aid station workers, they see you, and everybody sees you that last day, and they all want you to succeed. The other runners want you to succeed. And where I run, I'm not at the front of the pack. I'm not trying to win anything. I'm just trying to make time. There wasn't a single person out there that wasn't really hopeful that everybody was going to meet their goal and be really encouraged. Everybody was so encouraging, and it was just the best. It was one of the best race
hoping to get
experiences ever.
some kind of feedback on where you were, and I never heard. I mean, Chris said, because Chris was working the first aid station, so she said, you were looking good when you went by that, but then I didn't hear the next two aid stations. I was like, how's Mindy doing? So I don't know. And you should have been gone. So like, maybe she already dropped or whatever. And then you got to that last aid station, and Chris didn't tell me you got hurt at all. She goes, yeah, Mindy went through. She's looking good. She'll be fine. She's going to do it. And so tell her the story about your leg.
Well, I was about 5 miles in, and I was running slow, and there were a couple.
And it was on the Julie Trail, right?
I don't know the name of any of those trails. I just know
was it after the bridge?
I don't know.
Because that's where it really gets rocky.
It was really, 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 really rocky.
Big cliff line on one side.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's the Orange Trail. That is probably the most technical trail in all of Chattanooga.
And it was and it's not only the rocks, but it's like half of a single track. And then one half just slides away down a big ravine. And so I'm running.
Goat trail.
There's another girl with me who had fallen earlier and hurt her knee really bad. But a big group of us converged on her, and we got her through that. And she kept running, and she was feeling better. And she and I were running together. And I turned to make sure I had not missed a flag, because the other thing you do not want to do on day 3 is miss a flag and go the wrong way.
Not good.
That it just tears at your soul to do something like that. So on this really rocky path, when your body's exhausted, you've had 3 days of this, it's hot as shit. Your whole body can't cool down. And I turned to see if I had missed a flag going that way, and I heard my ankle rip. I just heard it rip. I went over on it. I heard it rip. And I was like, oh, I actually cried. I don't ever cry when I get hurt. Usually I'm just pissed. And then I was like, okay. I kept telling myself, it's the same thing I said to myself when I was in labor, having my 4 kids. Okay, you can do this. And I just kept saying to myself, okay. And I just kind of hobbled out of it. And then this other gal I was with, she moved on. And I have to say something about this girl I was with. She had been running with my training partner the first 2 days. Yeah. He's a speed goat, and he did great on day 3, so he was way ahead of us. She loved this trail race so much, and she loved the community. She has applied for 5 jobs in Chattanooga and is ready to move here.
Nice.
She has an interview this month. I know, which is pretty awesome. Yeah, that's really just speaks to how special. Like I said, there's like nothing like this race. Cool. So she's like, do you want me to wait? I'm like, no, because your whole point out there is make your time. If you have the potential to get your finishing time, you just go. So I just kind of hobbled. I almost slid down that ravine, and my ankle tweaked again. I'm like, oh my God, what am I going to do? And then Chris had also told me, Mindy, cool off. There's this one part of that trail that has a big swimming hole area. She says, you get 30 seconds. And I was like, okay, so I get to this. I'm miserable. I think I'm not going to make time anyway. So I get in, and kind of like day 2, I completely submerged my body. I swam around and I counted. I counted to 15. Mm-hmm. And I was like, I probably shouldn't take the full 30 seconds because I'm going pretty slow. I give myself 3 more seconds, and then I slowly start climbing out. And this other fella comes down at this time, and he dips his hat in, but he doesn't choose to get all the way in. I mean, I was all the way in, swimming around in there.
Smart play.
And then I got out, and I was like, okay. And for the next mile and a half, I don't know, it was all really rocky, and it ran along the creek. Mm-hmm. And every fiber of my being wanted to just stop the race and get back in that creek and play in the creek for the rest of the day. Because my ankle, every time, if I kind of went just forward on a flat surface, I was okay. Well, obviously this trail is not just forward on a flat surface. There's
actually some places that you really have to be careful because it's right. I mean, it is half. It's not a single track. It's a half track, and there's a big drop.
And I slid on it. And I almost went down, and this ankle tweaked, and I was like, oh no. But somewhere along the line, I just said, I'm just going to keep going. Yeah. And I had resigned myself that I probably wasn't going to get a finishing time on the Sunday, which I was okay with. I wanted to finish the race. For me, on this particular race, I was like, as long as I actually cross the finish line, I don't care if I get the Randy Wharton finishing time. It's really hard, but doable. I learned it's doable. And I just kept moving. And Chris came and found me before that aid station, and I was doing the Mindy hobble. I was just shuffling and hobbling, and I looked at her. She's like, it's 3.5 miles. I'm like, 3.5 miles to the next aid. And I mean, you're so confused. To the next aid station. She goes, no, 3.5 miles to the finish. I'm like, Chris, I hurt myself. I hurt myself real bad. She's like, you got it. I was like, but I hurt myself. She's like, 3.5 miles, and it's flat.
It's pretty
easy
compared to what you did,
And I was like, okay, I can do it. Yeah. And I ran into one of the other young ladies I had been running with. Yeah. This was her second year running this race. Yeah. She comes from Florida, also absolutely loves this race. And I love her. I met her last year at Packet Pickup. Yeah. And we got to run together for most of Sunday, which was also a really fun experience about a stage race is that you meet and get to run with people. And at the end of the day, the race isn't just over. You have another day that you might potentially get to run. And day 1 and day 2, I didn't really run with anybody. I kind of was in my own little world, solo. And day 3, Melissa and I got to run together almost the whole way. Oh, nice. And she was waiting at that last aid station. Oh. And she hurt herself. Yeah. And we called it the M&M Shuffle, the Melissa Mindy Shuffle, because we just kept going. And it was pretty emotional to have somebody with you the whole way. Well, the whole thing was emotional. I sobbed like a baby when I crossed that finish line because, lo and behold, so I ran about 5 miles on torn tendons and ligaments. My ankle was massive. Yeah, it was nasty. And I still made finishing time, and it was pretty much.
Not only did you make the finishing time, but you also won your age group.
Oh my God!
So there's the age group award.
I won the age group award. Awesome. And, it's the official old lady age group, which is okay.
Well, I mean.
Oh, that's my whole time? Somebody asked me what my time was. I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
That's what I say. Well, what are the different the stage times? I was like, I don't know. It's one race. It's a 60-mile race. It's not 3 20-mile races. So.
Well, I guess my time in my mind, I just had to make time each day. And day 3 was always a grab bag. Yeah. Like I wasn't sure what was going to happen, and I think a lot of people weren't sure necessarily what first timers,
especially if you've never been on that course and you hear the stories about it. It is, it is really technical and really challenging, but it's also extremely rewarding. Not only because of the challenge, but because of the beauty. I mean, the really rocky section on this one section is really rocky because you're right on the bottom of this beautiful cliff line. It's magnificent, and
I can't wait to go back.
There's all kinds of views. You get Edwards Point view, you get Signal Point view, which is the Tennessee River Gorge. It's just fantastic, and
you guys so conveniently put the aid stations where you couldn't just run. A lot of times when you're trying to race the clock and get there, you just blow through the aid stations. You don't look, you don't pay attention. You're just trying to make your time. You're chasing cutoff. We had to. Edwards Point was on the rock, which is awesome.
Go out there.
We had to go out there. Everybody had to soak in the glory that is
absolutely. It's
view.
Part of the deal.
And the really rocky section where I busted my ankle. It's absolutely fantastic, and I can't wait. I don't know if I will run that again, but I'm definitely going down to hike and sit in that water. That's cool. For sure.
Well, thank you for coming. This is awesome.
I'm so excited.
so proud of you, and I think there's a lot. I hope this the listeners out there will sort of take this to heart. I mean, it's especially stuff like this that's really hard. It's not about speed; it's about endurance, and endurance is more about a mental capacity than it is about being a fast, strong runner. It's more about just keep going and just don't give up. Don't give up.
You got to show up on the day and get started.
Yeah, and then just don't give up. It's mental, not physical. So, thanks for coming.
Well, thank you,
Awesome.
Randy.
As always.
I appreciate it. Thank you, OddStory. Thanks,
Awesome.
Steph. It was fun to be here.
See you next week.